pleasant environment, get ready for a healthy activity. Friendly atmosphere yields tremendous output. Poor surroundings, challenges of today's world. Melting glaciers, global warming is increasing.
बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। अस्सलाम वालेकुम स्टूडेंट्स। उम्मीद करता हूँ कि आप सब लोग खैरियत के साथ होंगे and I welcome you all here today to the 15th lecture of environmental psychology. Students, as usual, let us start our lecture with a brief description of what we discussed in our last lecture. हमारा last lecture था environmental evaluation के बारे में और हमने इस topic के reference से कैप्लन का मॉडल स्टडी किया था। जब हम environmental evaluation को समझने की कोशिश करते हैं तो different psychologists have come up with different models and Kaplan's model was first in the line. So let me give you a brief review of what we discussed in our last lecture. Students, when we talk about environmental evaluation, then the important question at the heart of this topic is that how we come to evaluate our environment favorably or unfavorably. हम अपनी environment को जब positively evaluate करते हैं या negatively evaluate करते हैं तो उसकी क्या वजूहात हो सकती हैं। यहाँ पर इस सवाल का जवाब तलाश करते वक्त हमने कैप्लन के मॉडल को डिस्कस किया था। However, we discussed that before we get into these technical models coming up from different psychologists, there is a general observation that is common to all of the people, which is that all those places that we like, we tend to approach them. और वो सारी जगहें जो हमें नापसंद होती हैं, हम उनको avoid करने की कोशिश करते हैं। This also works according to the pleasure principle, which means that all those stimuli that are pleasing to us, we would try to have them, we would try to approach them. And all those stimuli that are negative or that are painful for us, we try to avoid them. We try to get away from the painful stimuli. ये हमारी रोज़मर्रा common observation से बात सामने आती है कि जिन जगहों पर हमें जाना पसंद होता है, अमूमन हमें उन जगहों के अंदर कोई बातें पसंद होती हैं या फिर जब हम उन जगहों पर पहुंचते हैं तो हमारे अंदर कोई पॉजिटिव मूड क्रिएट करती हैं या कोई पॉजिटिव थिंकिंग क्रिएट करती हैं जिसकी वजह से हमें वो जगहें पसंद आती हैं। लेकिन वो सारी जगहें जो हमें नापसंद आती हैं वहाँ पर जाके हम अच्छा महसूस नहीं करते। बाज़ औक़ात हम डिस्ट्रेस्ड महसूस करते हैं, जिसका मतलब है कि हम किसी जगह को बहुत ज़्यादा नापसंद कर रहे हैं, और बाज़ औक़ात हम सैड या सोम्बर महसूस करते हैं, जिसका मतलब है कि हम सैड हैं, उदास हैं। इसकी एग्जांपल्स कुछ इस तरह से हो सकती हैं। मिसाल के तौर पर अगर आप क्रिकेट मैच देखने के लिए जाते हैं तो शायद आप बहुत एक्साइटेड फील कर रहे हों, आपको बहुत मज़ा आ रहा हो एंड यू वुड एक्चुअली लव दैट प्लेस। और क्रिकेट मैच में जाने के लिए आप सारी रुकावटों को अबूर करना चाहेंगे। मसलन आप एक टिकट खरीदेंगे, फिर आप उन सारे स्पेक्टेटर्स की लंबी क्यू के अंदर खड़े होकर इंतज़ार करेंगे अपनी बारी का, ताकि आप स्टेडियम के अंदर दाखिल हो सकें और अपने एनक्लोजर तक पहुंच सकें। So you actually go through a lot of hurdles before you actually get into that match और आप उस मैच को सारा दिन देखते हैं। दरअसल आपको उस मैच को देखना, उस स्टेडियम के अंदर जाना, this is something that you like because you are feeling that when you will get into that environment, this would be very, very exciting, and that is why you build up all the courage, stamina to go through all of the hurdles. However, if you have to go through, say, the rush hour traffic in order to purchase some technical equipment from a market that is entrenched in the heart of the city, somewhere in the middle of the city, getting down to that place is very, very difficult because you have to cross through a thick storm of the traffic. जब आप किसी ऐसी जगह पर जाने के लिए निकलेंगे and in the back of your mind there is a feeling that you don't actually want to go there, क्योंकि उस सारी ट्रैफिक को अबूर करना, उस शोर को, उस धुएं को देखना और फिर ट्रैफिक के अंदर से अपनी गाड़ी को मैनिपुलेट करना, इट्स ऑल वेरी वेरी पेनफुल. सो यूर इन द हार्ट ऑफ योर हार्ट्स देयर इज सम फीलिंग दैट आई डोंट वांट टू गो देयर, आई वांट समहाउ टू अवॉइड इट. यार कोई और जाके ये इक्विपमेंट खरीद के ले आए, किसी तरह से मेरी बचत हो जाए. सो that environment is actually painful for you because you don't like it because of certain reasons. So it's very same that all those environments that we like, we tend to approach them, and all those environments that we dislike, we tend to avoid them. However, when we have to discuss this question away from the generalities into the specific technicalities, and we have to appreciate the issue in a more scientific fashion, then different psychologists have come forward and they have figured out different types of models in order to understand that what are those factors that give a person a positive evaluation of a certain environment. Students, Kaplan was a psychologist who came up with a model that explained the why people come to like certain environments, and his basic emphasis was upon the information content of a certain environment. He said, information content of an environment is an important dimension of environmental evaluation. जब हम किसी भी environment को evaluate कर रहे होते हैं तो उसका information content हमारे लिए बहुत important होता है. मसलन आप किसी ऐसी जगह पर जाते हैं जहाँ पर बेशुमार चीज़ें हैं, मसलन किसी मार्केट एरिया में जहाँ पर बहुत ज़्यादा रश है, तो आपके पास बहुत ज़्यादा इन्फॉर्मेशन आ रही है क्योंकि आप बहुत सारे ट्रैफिक को देख रहे हैं, बहुत सारे लोगों को देख रहे हैं, वहाँ पर बेशुमार बिलबोर्ड्स हैं, फिर मौसमी हालात भी आपकी अटेंशन को गेन करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं. सो देयर इज़ अ ह्यूज लोड ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन कंटेंट इन दैट एनवायरनमेंट. नाउ हाउ डू यू फील इन दैट पर्टिकुलर एनवायरनमेंट? डू यू फील गुड or do you feel bad? Well, a lot of people would say that I probably don't feel very good, but yet there will be other people who would say I feel very good in this environment because this is market area and there are so many things and there are so many shops and so many different types of people, and I simply love being on these places where I could see a lot of people around me. So preferences जो होती हैं वो डिफ़र करती हैं लोगों की, उसके अंदर इंडिविजुअल डिफरेंसेस भी होते हैं, लेकिन इंफॉर्मेशन कंटेंट ऑफ द एनवायरनमेंट इज़ वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट एस्पेक्ट. यहाँ पर कैप्लन का ये कहना है कि बेसिस फॉर प्रेफरेंस ऑफ अ सर्टेन एनवायरनमेंट is individuals' ability in two basic areas, and these two basic areas were, number one, कि हम किसी environment की information content की sense किस तरह से बना सकते हैं, उस environment में चीज़ें किस तरह से organized हैं कि हम उस environment की sense बना सकते हैं, हम उस environment को आराम से समझ सकते हैं. मसलन कोई साहब किसी नई जगह पर जाते हैं तो उनके लिए उस जगह को समझना मुश्किल हो जाता है क्योंकि इंफॉर्मेशन कंटेंट उस एनवायरनमेंट का शायद उनके लिए इतना ज़्यादा कंड्यूसिव नहीं है, उनको थोड़ा प्रॉब्लम होता है चीज़ों को समझने में. लेकिन मसलन अगर एक बच्चा एक नई यूनिवर्सिटी में जाता है, एक नई स्कूल में जाता है और उस यूनिवर्सिटी की बिल्डिंग कुछ इस तरह से डिज़ाइन की गई है कि उस बिल्डिंग को समझना बहुत आसान है. मुख्तलिफ़ क्लासेस के बाहर डायरेक्शनल साइंस हैं, कैंटीन एरिया या फिर हॉस्टल एरिया तक पहुंचने के लिए भी डायरेक्शंस हैं, which means that that university is very well organized, then that particular student would find himself at ease to learn about that environment, which means the information content available that environment is organized in such a fashion that it is very easy for the student to make sense of it. However, if the information content is designed in such a way that this is haphazard, this is disorganized, then that student might find it very, very difficult to understand the total geographical map of that university. And this student will take a long time before he comes to terms with that particular environment. Which is what Kaplan said, कि किसी भी environment के अंदर information किस तरह से है और उस environment की sense बनाना लोगों के लिए कितना आसान है, this is a very, very important factor that contributes towards positive evaluation. The second important feature that Kaplan discussed was कि किसी environment के अंदर वो कौन सी चीज़ें हैं जो लोगों को motivate करती हैं उस environment के बारे में learn करने में. यहाँ पर मैंने आपको मिसाल दी कि अगर आप कंप्यूटर साइंस के स्टूडेंट हैं और आप अपनी यूनिवर्सिटी की लैबोरेटरी से निकल के किसी बहुत बड़ी कंपनी की, किसी ऐसी बहुत बड़ी कंपनी की प्रोडक्शन यूनिट के अंदर जाते हैं जहाँ पर माइक्रोचिप्स बनाई जाती हैं, तो शायद आपके अंदर बहुत ज़्यादा मोटिवेशन हो कि आप उस एनवायरनमेंट के बारे में लर्न करें, क्योंकि आप यूनिवर्सिटी में लैबोरेटरी के अंदर जो चीज़ें बहुत सिंपल और रूडिमेंट्री शेप के अंदर देखते हैं, आप किसी फैक्ट्री के अंदर जाकर वो सारी चीज़ें बहुत प्रोफेशनल अंदाज में होते हुए देखेंगे और आपको बहुत ज़्यादा कॉम्प्लिकेटेड मशीनरी नज़र आएगी. यू probably would see a lot of organization in that place and you would be thoroughly surprised. And based upon that surprise, you would be very curious in order to find out that how this environment works. How can I make sense of this particular environment? Which is exactly what Kaplan said, that if a certain environment is organized in such a way that there are different elements that motivate people to learn about that environment, then there are chances that people would come to have positive evaluation of that particular environment. Students, इन दोनों postulates की बुनियाद पर कैपलन ने अपना 4-factor मॉडल propound किया. कैपलन ने दरअसल 4 ऐसे फैक्टर्स तलाश किए जिनकी वजह से किसी एनवायरनमेंट को इस हिसाब से देखा जा सकता है कि इस एनवायरनमेंट की सेंस बनाना आसान है या मुश्किल है, इस एनवायरनमेंट को समझना आसान है या मुश्किल है, या ये भी उससे अंदाज़ा लगाया जा सकता है कि किसी एनवायरनमेंट के अंदर वो कितने फैक्टर्स हैं जो स्टूडेंट को जो किसी को मोटिवेट करते हैं उस एनवायरनमेंट के बारे में लर्न करने में. सो द 4 फैक्टर्स Kaplan grouped them into, Kaplan basically put them into 2 groups. These 2 groups were, number 1, the group that contains the factors which help an individual make sense of the environment, and the second group was consisting of the factors that help an individual to get involved in that environment. In the group number 1, Kaplan placed 2 basic factors, and these were, number 1, coherence, and number 2 was legibility. When Kaplan talks about coherence, he means to say the degree to which the elements of settings are organized, that is to say, they fit together. किसी भी environment के अंदर मुख्तलिफ elements किस तरह से organize किए गए हैं, किस तरह से वो एक दूसरे के साथ fit होते हैं. मसलन अगर आप अपने किसी दोस्त को मिलने के लिए जाते हैं and your friend invites you into his room, and if you find out that things are very haphazard, चीज़ों में organization नहीं है and the room is very untidy, you probably might not feel very good in that environment. शायद आप उस कमरे के अंदर जाके बहुत खुश महसूस ना करें और शायद आपको एहसास हो कि यहाँ पर डिसऑर्गेनाइजेशन है बहुत ज़्यादा. दरअसल चीज़ों का बेतरतीब होना किसी environment में, चीज़ों का incoherent होना किसी environment में, it creates probably a negative evaluation amongst us, and we don't really want to learn a lot about that environment because that propounds to the level of chaos. Now, Kaplan said that if things are coherent in a certain environment, which means they are fitting together with each other very well, then people would find it easy for themselves to make sense of that environment. The next factor was legibility, which was the orderly fashion and ease with which an individual can process and categorize the elements of the settings. किसी भी एक एनवायरनमेंट के अंदर मुख्तलिफ एलिमेंट्स जो हैं वो किस तरह एक दूसरे के साथ हार्मोनाइज कर रहे हैं, उनके अंदर कोई तरतीब है. यहाँ पर आपने एक नेचुरल टेंडेंसी अमूमन लोगों में देखी होगी कि जब भी हम अपने घरों को डेकोरेट करने की कोशिश करते हैं तो हम उसके अंदर एक कलर स्कीम का कॉन्सेप्ट लेके आते हैं. दीवारों का कलर सोफ़े के कलर के साथ और टेबल के कलर्स के साथ किसी ना किसी तरह से मैच कर रहा होता है, या इवन कंट्रास्ट भी हो तो देयर इज़ अ हार्मनी इन एवरीथिंग, और उस हिसाब से, उस कलर स्कीम के हिसाब से सारा कमरा ऑर्गेनाइज किया जाता है. अगर हम जब कपड़े पहनते हैं तो हमारे अंदर एक नेचुरल टेंडेंसी ये होती है कि हम अपने कपड़ों को मैच करते हैं. Why do we match the colors of our clothes? Why does it matter to us at all? Why would you want to wear a white shirt with a gray trouser? Well, white and gray are 2 distinct colors, but we see a lot of harmony in that because right from our school days, we are watching kids wearing the uniform in which they wear gray trousers and white shirts. And every time we see this combination, we see that there is some harmony and it is easier for us to understand it. So in the same way, every time we try to decorate our homes, our rooms, or we try to design clothes for ourselves, we tend to have some kind of harmony in the things, in the different elements that constitute the total environment. मसलन कमरों के अंदर कलर मैचिंग, फर्नीचर के स्टाइल की मैचिंग, फर्नीचर के साइज़ की मैचिंग, कमरे के साइज़ के हिसाब से फर्नीचर, all these things are adding to the organization and harmony of that particular room. Students, the next group that Kaplan suggested was consisting of 2 factors, and these 2 factors actually help an individual engage with a certain environment. आप उस environment को learn करने में कितना motivated हैं. And these 2 factors were, number 1, complexity, and number 2 was mystery. Complexity means कि किसी environment के अंदर कितने elements हैं और कितनी variety है उन elements के अंदर. मसलन अगर आप किसी के ड्राइंग रूम में जाते हैं और वो ड्राइंग रूम बहुत बड़ा है और वहाँ पर बेशुमार चीज़ें पड़ी हुई हैं, you probably would find yourself interested in learning more about that drawing room. क्योंकि ये ड्राइंग रूम बहुत ज़्यादा बड़ा है एंड दिस इज़ प्रॉपरली स्टफ्ड। इसके अंदर बहुत सारी चीज़ें हैं, मुख्तलिफ़ किस्म के सोफ़ाज़ हैं, मुख्तलिफ़ किस्म की सीट्स हैं, टेबल्स हैं, then there are different decoration pieces, there are different paintings, different lamps. So when you enter in that room, there is so much stuff, and in all of that stuff there is so much variety that you simply feel motivated to see everything around you so that you could make sense of that particular place. So you will be motivated to learn about that place. The next important factor was mystery. Now, what is mystery? Mystery is the degree to which the setting has hidden information that captures the viewer's imagination. जब आपको किसी environment के अंदर hints मिलते हैं मुख्तलिफ चीज़ों के बारे में, तो वो भी आपको motivate करते हैं उस environment के बारे में learn करने में. मसलन किसी drawing room के अंदर आपको hint मिल सकता है of a rainy day. Different restaurants design themselves according to different types of themes. Say a rainy day, a desert, or say simply a restaurant or simply a marketplace. Maybe someone can organize a restaurant in the shape of a park or a picnic place. So there are different types of hints, and those hints are actually the mystery, and that mystery is the beauty of that place. Because that place is very mysterious, because there are different types of hints, you probably find yourself motivated to learn about that place a little more. Students, these four important factors help people come up to form different kinds of evaluations about their environments. Kaplan said that people prefer environments high on coherence and legibility, which means if in an environment the coherence and legibility, both of them are high, then people would tend to like those environments. People would tend to come up with positive evaluation of that environment. However, if an environment is low on these factors, guess what happens? You probably don't like that place. You probably come to form a negative evaluation of that environment. So the next important thing is the greater degree of complexity and mystery produce preference for a setting, because you're naturally more motivated to learn about that place. And then once you are motivated, you want to learn a lot more about that place. Simply, you are glued with it. You want to see that what else is present here, how many other things are here, because that's new information and that's very, very interesting, and you simply are curious. You can't help but learn about that place. Kaplan also came up with an important point, which was the biological basis to preferences for certain environments. And he said that every environment has a survival value for individuals that are into that environment. This survival value is actually helping individuals come to prefer certain environments over certain other environments. Just like I gave you the example of the student in a new university, if the place is organized, then this student can learn about the university quick, very, very fast. And that is the survival value, because in order for him to pass his courses, to conduct himself through the university very, very effectively, he has to learn about that place like the back of his hand. Now, if that place is disorganized, if it is designed in such a fashion that he cannot find other ways, then naturally the student is going to take a long time to acclimatize himself with the place, build up his cognitive maps, and effectively conduct himself through the university. So, if an environment is organized, that has the survival value for that student, because he's not going to spend a lot of time on that, and all the remaining time he's going to use it for activities or tasks that are going to contribute towards his performance in the ultimate exams. So you see, students, that the biological value or the survival value of every place actually helps us build a positive or negative evaluation of different environments. Students, let us now discuss environmental aesthetics. What is environmental aesthetics? Basically, what is aesthetics? Aesthetics is a sense of beauty in every human being. It's a sense that appreciates beauty. Do you like beautiful things? Do you like beautiful faces? Do you like beautiful places? Of course you do. But what is beautiful? How do you come to say that a certain thing is beautiful, that a certain face is more pretty than another face, or a certain scene is more beautiful than another scene? Have you ever asked yourself a question that on your next vacation, would you like to go to a seashore? Would you like to go to a hill station? Or would you like to go to a desert? Imagine, in Pakistan, people usually plan their summer vacations going on the hill stations. But have you ever seen someone who's planning his summer vacation to go and explore the desert of Thar in the middle of that extensive heat over that place? Have you ever imagined that? Would you say that that gentleman could be out of his guts, out of his mind, because in the middle of the summer, he is planning to go to a desert? But just imagine, in the middle of the summer, the desert is at its full swing. Everything that makes it a desert is actually right there. It is a complete environment. And for someone, that fullness of the desert might be something that he or she would want to appreciate more than someone else who wants to go to a hill station. So, what is beautiful? Is beauty in the eye of the beholder? Or is there something in that environment that makes it more beautiful than others? So, when we think about it like that, we can always say that probably there are some objective dimensions according to which we come to evaluate an environment positively or negatively. Now, what are those objective dimensions? Have you ever noticed? Did you ever think about it? All you have to do is to decipher every environment. Just decompose it into different elements and now try to guess that which factor is contributing towards which type of evaluation. Well, you could always say that there will be a lot of individual differences. Some people like to go to the desert, some people like to go to the hill stations, so there is no big deal. But there are some things that could be common in every beautiful thing. How's that? There could be something in every beautiful face that is common. There could be something in every beautiful environment that is common. And since all those common factors gather themselves up in that particular environment, and that is why most of the people would come to say that this is a beautiful place. Wow, I want to be here. Now, let us try to see that what are those common factors. When we talk about environmental aesthetics, there may be individual differences, definitely, granted. There may be environmental differences. One environment may be different from another environment, and probably that is why it is beautiful. A gentleman who's living on the hill station probably would want to come to the town to have his vacation. And a gentleman who's living in the cities, they probably would want to go to the hill station because that is where they are planning their summer vacations. So there is individual differences. There are environmental differences also. So what is the real story? What is the real environmental aesthetics? Students, since we are talking about finding out the common elements, you could not deny that probably 99% of the people would prefer Lahore Fort over a junkyard, isn't it? A junkyard is an ugly place compared to Lahore Fort. Lahore Fort, most of the people would say, is more beautiful than a junkyard. So, can you tune your mind into it now? Can you really see that there would definitely be some common elements in every beautiful thing? And how can we understand, how can we find out those elements? I have an equally interesting research to match your curiosity. And this research was conducted by Berlin. So this is popularly called Berlin research. Berlin conducted these researches way back in 1960. Berlin propounded that there are certain collective properties to every environment. Now, what are those collective properties? Just to get you into it, let me define this for you. Can you see it on the slide? Collective properties of environment are characteristics that cause us to compare present settings to previous settings one has encountered. Every environment has certain characteristics, and you would come to notice a difference in those characteristics when you get into a new environment, which means that in your home, you are used to your home. You are used to all those characteristics of the environment that is in your home. However, when you go to your friend's home, you look at it and you find out that there are many different types of characteristics in this new environment that is also a home. Now, what is different? So you immediately come to compare the existing environment with the previous environment that is in the hard drive of your brain, and that information is about the environment of your home. So in the new place, you come to appreciate the differences. It certainly gives you an idea that the previous environment of the same kind of setup was different. There were different characteristics, and now the existing environment is having different types of characteristics. And that is how you come to understand the differences. Hold on, over here, we are just going very, very slowly, and we are just trying to get into the concept and what Berlin has told us, that first of all, how do we identify the minute differences? Now, we are actually talking about characteristics, and finally we'll see if we are able to propound or come up to the point where we can find out that what are those characteristics. Now, once again, I find yourself interested. So, let us get into this figure where Berlin has pointed out different factors of an environment that could be called the collective properties of an environment. This is a big ball, and this big ball has 4 different parts. And these 4 different parts are actually the 4 factors which are the collective properties of environment. Factor number 1 that Berlin coined was complexity. Complexity means degree of variety in the elements of an environment. This is something very similar to the previous theory. Degree of variety in the elements of an environment. How are different types of elements present in an environment, and how much diversity is there? The second thing is novelty. You always notice novelty in a new environment, something that's unique, something that's novel, something that's different from the things that you have been used to watching before. Now, what is novelty? Extent to which stimuli not previously encountered or noticed are present. Novelty is all those things that you have not seen before. Novelty is probably the organization of placing all those things in a certain fashion that you have not seen anywhere else before. Every time you go to a restaurant, what do you find common over there? Tables, chairs, waiters, waiteresses, foods, menus, music maybe. But every restaurant has a different type of environment. And once you are used to going to one type of restaurant and suddenly your friend takes you to another type of restaurant, you find it very novel, because this time around the color of the table is blue and the color of the chair is orange, and the waiters and the waitresses are wearing certain types of dresses. The food is entirely different, so you say, wow, this is a very novel place. And certainly you compare it with the previous information that you had, and your mind says, this is novel. Are you interested to learn about this environment? Great. The next is surprisingness. How much surprised would you be in a certain environment? Well, how about from Pakistan you go to, say, visiting Niagara Falls. Yes, it is the biggest natural waterfall anywhere in the world. And if you have seen that on TV, just imagine if you are visiting that place now. If you are on that place now, you are seeing a lot of water, and that water is jumping down on the rocks from a great height. Probably you have not seen this scene before, and you say, oh my God, this is beautiful. You are totally 100% surprised. And once you are surprised, you probably would love that place. You probably would want to learn about that place a little bit more. So what is surprisingness? Environment that contains elements we do not expect to be present. So what is the reason of your surprise to be at the Niagara Falls? Probably the height, probably a lot of water, probably all those things that you have not seen before. And when you happen to be in that environment, which is consisted of so many elements that you have not seen before, all you can say, wow, this is beautiful. Oh my God, this place is wonderful, because you're thoroughly surprised. Now, tell me one thing. Every time you are surprised like that, which means you are extremely surprised, how does your body react? Do you feel pleasant inside? Do you feel excited? Or do you feel a little bit stirred up? What actually happens? Surprisingness always comes up with a certain type of physiological reaction as well. And when we experience that physiological reaction inside our body, we immediately come up to say, wow, great. And the very fact that we come up with that kind of response is evidence to the fact that our body is going through some kind of physiological process right now. So students, surprisingness is one of the factors that constitutes the collective properties of an environment. The next is incongruity. What is incongruity? Things that are not in place, things that do not match. There comes a funny example in my mind for incongruity. Guess what? A couple where the height of the husband is 3 feet and the height of the wife is beyond 6 feet, that is incongruous. That is something that does not match. We do have such couples in the world, but every time we have a look around, we look at them, we say, this is really different. What is not fitting in? Because this is incongruous. It is all because we are used to seeing husbands who are taller than their wives. And in this case, the husband's height is shorter than the normal height of the man. And the wife's height is taller, is longer than the normal height of women. That is why this is an incongruous couple for us. So what is incongruity? Let us define it on the slide. Extent to which an environment contains stimuli that do not seem to go together harmoniously. Yeah? Things that do not just fit together. There is no harmony in that. And every time we come across such an environment where things are incongruous to each other, then we say, oh, something is different here. Then we tend to be taking interest in that environment. No, I'm not saying that positive or negative evaluation, but all am I saying is that we tend to get into it. We just build up our curiosity and we want to learn a little bit more about it. Now, what are Berlin's arguments based upon this? Berlin had been thinking about it for quite a long time. In 1974, Berlin came up with some arguments. These were his arguments. Number one was, aesthetic judgments are most positive for environments at intermediate levels of each of these dimensions. We saw 4 dimensions: complexity, novelty, surprisingness, incongruity. Now, each of these dimensions, we could see it on the 10-point scale. Point 1 of complexity is very simple, no complexity at all. And point 10 is totally complex. It is being very difficult for us to make sense of that place. What Berlin said, that if the things on the dimension of complexity are at level 5 on a scale from point 1 to point 10, then we are interested in that. Then we would say that this is pleasant environment. We would have a favorable evaluation of that environment. This only means that we either judge too much or too little complexity, novelty, incongruity, surprisingness of an environment. When things go beyond normalcy, when things go beyond the normal range, when things are at the extremes, either on point 1, either on point 10, only then we would notice them as pleasant or unpleasant. So these were Berlin's argument. Now, Berlin's model should be reminding you of something, some theory that we have discussed before. Wonderful. You remember that? Yes, that is the adaptation level theory. We discussed it in our last chapter. Adaptation level theory was saying something the same way. We tend to notice all those stimuli that deviate from adaptation level. Now, adaptation level, what is that? Adaptation level is the level on which we tend to take stimuli as normal. However, if they deviate from the adaptation level, then we might tend to notice all those things. So, whatever Berlin said actually relates to adaptation level theory as well. There was another psychologist who was watching all of this, and in 1976, he came up with different types of conclusions. The name of the psychologist was Mr. Walwell, and in 1976, Walwell came up with this conclusion. Walwell believed that judgments of beauty increase monotonically with increase in novelty and surprisingness, as well as with decreases in incongruity. So what Walwell said, that in a certain environment when novelty and surprisingness are increasing, are rising up, we would probably have more favorable evaluation of that environment. However, if the incongruity is also rising up, then we might not like it. So according to the Walwell's formula to look at all these things was that surprisingness and novelty, if they are increasing, they are adding to the favorable evaluation of that environment. However, incongruity, on the other hand, has to decrease in order to get the favorable evaluation from individuals. Now, collective properties have some relationship with exploratory behaviors. What is exploratory behavior? We discussed in our last lecture that we are motivated to learn about certain environments. Every environment presents certain elements in it that simply make us go curious, that simply give us the motivation to learn about it. The motivation to learn about it, something driven by curiosity, is very close to exploration. We try to explore environments. In this theory, they found out that collective properties of environments have some relationship with exploratory behaviors as well. And they propounded two types of behaviors in this regard. Number one was specific exploration, and number two was diversive exploration. Let us see what is specific exploration. Specific exploration increases as the level of uncertainty in the environment increases. You happen to be, say, going through a hiking trip close to a valley in Gilgit. The hiking track gets narrower and narrower, it gets steeper and steeper, and after some time it becomes very, very dangerous for you. Now, you are not used to this kind of hiking track before. Based upon the uncertainty in that environment, there is height, there is steep, you are not used to that environment, you would want to make specific explorations in order to get out of that place safe and sound. You would want to see the path very, very clearly. You would want to notice where you are putting your foot, everything about it, which means that in that environment, you are making specific explorations. And specific explorations are helping you sail through successfully in that environment. What is next? Uncertainty creates arousal, which leads to specific exploration of the source that creates arousal. We always want to know that what is the source of it. First of all, if you are on this hiking track that is getting steeper, narrower, dangerous, how is your body feeling? Stirred up? You're very, very conscious. You don't want to lose sight of your track. You are gathering up probably all of the information that is available in that environment. You are making all of the specific explorations. And inside your body, you're feeling the physiological response of a very, very careful and cautious person. That response can be called arousal level, which means in specific exploration, our arousal level also increases. Students, the next was diversive exploration. हम diversive exploration कब करते हैं? Diversive exploration is pleasantness of a setting is the greatest at intermediate levels of uncertainty. जब किसी environment में uncertainty intermediate level पर रहती है, दरमियान में रहती है, which means on 1 to 10 scale, अगर ये 3 से 7 के दरमियान में रहती है, then we probably like that environment. Then that is the uncertainty that we can handle. Our body would be aroused, and we can always say that I'm feeling pleasant, I am pleasantly curious, I am pleasantly surprised. In such cases, diversive exploration occurs when uncertainty levels are low. But if the uncertainty level is very, very high, like we discussed in specific exploration, then you would want to learn, what is this thing? How is this happening? How can I get out of this place? See, when collective properties of an environment are low, we feel understimulated and bored. We search the environment for ways to increase our arousal levels. Imagine yourself just another day at school. Everything is regular. The same classes, the same teachers, the same topics, the same interesting lectures are going on. And you're just part of that environment. You are aroused in that environment, but not so much, because you have done it so many times before that you can simply go through it with a low-level arousal. You actually are getting bored on this place. And guess what happens? Suddenly your friend comes up with a very naughty idea of cracking a joke or doing something that would just take away that boredom, that would just increase your arousal level. और आप अपने दोस्त के साथ मिलकर कोई शरारतें करते हैं और उन शरारतों की वजह से शायद you could get the spanking from the teacher, or your teacher might go very, very angry with you, but maybe the students would have a great laughter, so would you. You have gone through the arousal, and this is all very good. What have you done? You have broken down the monotony, the boredom that came up with the low level of uncertainty. and you were not aroused properly in that environment. Students, that was it. Now let us move towards the next model. The next model is affective basis for environmental evaluation. I said affective, not effective. When we talk about affective, then we are concentrating upon the mood. Then we are concentrating upon the sentiment. Everywhere we go, we either feel pleasant or we either feel unpleasant. We feel happy or we feel sad, isn't it? हम हर जगह के ऊपर किसी ना किसी सेंटिमेंट में से गुजर रहे होते हैं. अगर सेंटिमेंट्स अपनी प्रॉपर शेप में हैं, जिसका मतलब है कि अराउजल लेवल हाई है, हम बहुत ज़्यादा क्यूरियस हैं, हम बहुत ज़्यादा खुश हैं, हम बहुत ज़्यादा एक्साइटेड हैं, we would like it. But if the arousal level is low, we probably would go through the sentiment of boredom. So what is affect? How do we have different types of affect in environments? और जब हम मुख्तलिफ environments में जाते हैं और हमारे पर मुख्तलिफ moods और sentiments आते हैं, तो इसका हमारा उस environment के evaluation पर क्या असर पड़ता है? Affective responses to environments are determined by degree of discrepancy between current levels of stimulation and the adaptation level. Once again, almost the same thing. That is, the level of stimulation we have become accustomed to. Which means that affective responses to an environment are determined by the degree of discrepancy, the difference between the stimuli that we are used to and the stimuli that are present in the current environment. We are used to, say, living in the town. Summer vacation is there, we go on a hill station. Entirely different set of stimuli. We have totally changed our environment. How are you feeling? Of course, you are feeling pleasant. You're away from the school, away from the town, away from the daily routines, and now you're on the hill station just spending time, just enjoying the breeze, just having nice, great time on a very nice place. Of course, you would feel very good. And your feeling of pleasantness, your positive evaluation of this environment is actually based upon the discrepancy between the stimuli that you experienced in both of the environments. In the city, the stimuli were somewhere on your adaptation level. I mean, you are used to that environment. आप शहर से hill station पे जाते हैं, your stimuli change. Your stimuli are totally different. You are adapting to this new environment, and that is creating a positive impact, a positive mood in you. Now, let us talk about an example. Let us think about the story in order to understand this point much better. Sarah and Jamil recently got married, and they're very happy about it. And Jamil is going to be posted out of town. Sarah will be accompanying him, and they are looking at the prospect of starting a new home. Jamil is working at the middle management level, so his salary is pretty decent, but not a lot. So this newly wedded couple goes out of town, out of their locale, out of their environment, and they start a new home over there. They buy themselves or they rent themselves a small home where they bring in everything new, and they are constantly settling it and making it perfect, neat, all that. And all of this activity is beautiful. Now, the new home that emerges is very, very different from their individual homes in which they were living before their marriages. And they are always feeling very pleasant in this environment. Now, just fast forward the time. Sarah and Jamil, 10 years later. What is happening? Probably the same home, maybe the same furniture that has been changed. The setting of that furniture has been changed over and over again. All types of settings have been seen. Now, there is probably nothing new. Sarah and Jamil find out they are extremely bored. Their home is extremely boring because they have experienced everything, and they have done all kinds of settings. At this point of time, Jamil gets a promotion, and he gets a pay raise, and he gets to be posted in another town where he would be given a big home by the company. Now, they are again very, very excited, so they get into the new environment. And once again, they find out that the days when they were newly wedded have come back again. They are excited like babies. They want to decorate their homes. They want to just organize their place, and they are feeling very happy about it. What is the reason of their happiness? Because in the new place, the set of stimuli in the new environment have totally, absolutely changed for them, because that is a huge deviation from the adaptation level that was built up for them in their older home. Now, that's a drastic change. That's probably a big change for them, and that's a very positive change. That creates a very positive mood in them. But if you once again fast forward the time, 10 years down the line, how are they feeling? Well, God only knows. However, for us, we can understand Walwell's butterfly curve hypothesis. Are you surprised? Well, that's a long name, but let me speak it again for you. Walwell's butterfly curve hypothesis. Let us see Sarah and Jamil's story, or for that matter, anyone else's story, according to this model. What actually happens when things start deviating from absolute level? Things start deviating from the levels that we are usually used to. I would like to take you to this slide. On this slide, you can see a butterfly graph. The central line is absolute threshold. The central vertical line is the absolute threshold. This line is perpendicular on the horizontal line that represents negative discrepancy and positive discrepancy. So you can see that stimuli can go either way from absolute level. They can go on the left side, which is negative discrepancy. They can go on the right side, which is positive discrepancy. Now, there are different levels of these discrepancies. If the discrepancy is going towards the left side, which means that this is going towards the negative, then the arousal level will be increased. The arousal level will be increased, and the effect will go from indifferent or boring level towards the positive side. It will rise up for a certain time period, and then it would drop down again, and it would come down to the totally negative side. Same happens with the positive side. When things deviate from the absolute level, things rise up from the indifferent level of effect up to a certain point, get into the positive effect, and there is an immediate fall after that. How can we interpret that? We can interpret that in this way. There is a curvilinear relationship between positive effect and discrepancies, resulting in either increase or decrease in arousal from adaptation level. So, the next is moderate increase or decrease in stimulation from adaptation level is taken as pleasant. Extreme deviations in either direction result in negative effect. Students, I hope you would have understood this butterfly graph. This is very, very simple. And in order to make it more simple for you, all this graph means to say is that if a gentleman comes from a very, very small village into a town where the population is about 20,000 people, then probably this gentleman would feel overwhelmed. Because in his village, it only consisted of a few hundred people. Now he's into a crowd of 20,000 people. That's a lot of people for him. He probably would be overwhelmed in this place. However, if a gentleman comes from Karachi and gets into this town where only 20,000 people are living, he probably might start feeling bored. He probably might start feeling that this city is not a lot of fun. This is a small town. So that is how, when things deviate from absolute level of threshold and get into either positive side or the negative side, and we have different effect level changes in our cells also. At this point onwards, students, let me take you to the next model that was given by Mehrabian and Russell. What were they trying to see? What were they trying to do? They used the concept of information rate to define environmental stimulation level. Now, environmental stimulation is a very, very important concept. When we are talking about it, then it means that in any environment that you go, there are different stimuli that are impinging upon you. Different stimuli are impacting upon you. We have discussed different factors with reference to stimuli, with reference to information. However, at this point of time, let me say that if in an environment there are different types of stimuli, they are novel, there is a huge variety in the stimuli, then that environment has huge information content for us. And that was what Mehrabian and Russell were trying to concentrate upon. Before we get into their model, let me give you some basic concepts that were common with them. Number one was information rate. Information rate is average rate of information impinging upon the senses per unit of time. Let us say in 1 minute, how many stimuli impacted on the mind of an individual, and the mind of the individual is compelled to process that particular information. Now, that level can always be different. Level can be low for certain environments, it can be high for certain other environments. The next is arousal. Now, these people are trying to see arousal in the perspective of information content also. Arousal is a direct correlate of information rate and the approach behaviors in an environment. Seeking out or desiring to remain in an environment are greatest for intermediate levels of arousal. इसका मतलब आम सादा ज़बान में कुछ इस तरह से हो सकता है कि किसी भी एनवायरनमेंट में जब आप जाते हैं तो वहाँ पर कितनी इन्फॉर्मेशन आपको मिलती है. हम इन्फॉर्मेशन को मुख्तलिफ लेवल्स के हिसाब से देख सकते हैं. मसलन बहुत कम इन्फॉर्मेशन, इंटरमीडिएट लेवल की इन्फॉर्मेशन या बहुत ज़्यादा इन्फॉर्मेशन. According to these propounders, they come up to say that when the information rate is at the medium level, the arousal level will be better, which means that we probably would like to seek out that place. However, when there is deviation, that deviation can be explained with reference to our getting out of that place, which means that we want to get rid of that place now. Students, this was the start of Mehrabian and Russell's model. This takes information content of an environment as the basic factor that helps people determine that how would they come to evaluate an environment, either positively or negatively. At this point of time, we are running short of time. We actually have to wrap up our lecture and leave the rest for the next lecture. So, I would like to call you goodbye. However, before you go, please do take good care of yourself. अपना, अपने दोस्तों का और अपने गिरदोनवा के लोगों का ख्याल रखिएगा, खुश रहिएगा और अच्छा वक्त गुजारिएगा. मुझे इजाज़त दीजिए. मिलते हैं अगले लेक्चर में. अल्लाह हाफिज़.